Hello and welcome back to ATV Geopolitics for the second half of the Ukraine War Update Extra video that I started earlier on today. Just before give you the second half of the video, because it was too long, I split it into two, always too much to talk about, or alternatively, I just talk too much. The latter is definitely true, and for which I apologize to the world. But before I go to that other stuff, here is a couple of things that are worth just pointing out. Again, it's just happening. Ukrainian General Staff reports that in their evening summary in the Bakhmut area, another Su-25 was shot down. So lately, a lot of claims of shot down attack helicopters and fighter jets are made by the GSUA. We'd really like to see at least some proof of it. So no report saying this is amazing, but actually we would like to see some proof. This is, I think, 4 helicopters shot down yesterday, 2 fixed-wing aircraft. Just a lot of stuff being shot down, and then another one being shot down today. Obviously, that would be superb if it was true for the Ukrainians. It's the loss of this equipment is huge, but even more so, as I keep saying, it's the loss of the pilots if they are lost with their equipment, because you can't just train pilots like that. It's not like sending a mobilized troop onto the front line. These people need expertise and a lot of flight time, although interestingly, Russian pilots get very little flight time compared to their American counterparts, so they can't afford to basically, I guess, keep them up in the air for all that much time during a year. At least that's the way I understand it. They have much less flight time, flight hours than US fighter pilots. So anyway, it would be great to see some evidence of that. Then here, General Staff are reporting, again, Ukrainian reporting this, but over 450 wounded Russians are being treated in the city hospital of the occupied city of Dnipro in the Zaporizhia region. The Vasilivka district hospital of the Zaporizhia region is also full of wounded Russian soldiers. This is a testament to the fact that they are losing, one would assume, a lot of troops all over the front lines. I mean, if the hospitals are full and you've got a wound ratio going on, there are going to be a lot of dead bodies as well, especially the KIA to WIA, killed in action to wounded in action, that we've been talking about that the Russians have. Or some claim it's almost near parity, 1 killed to 1.3 wounded. Well, if the hospitals are full, that's a lot of dead bodies as well. But even at 1 to 4, there's going to be a lot of dead bodies. So if you've got 450 wounded in one hospital, then that's going to be arguably over 100 soldiers, at least probably 150 at the very minimum soldiers dead. So that's bad news for the Russians. They are losing a lot of troops. Anyway, let's get back to the rest of what I was going to talk to you about. So good luck with that. Thanks again. Okay, so in today's Vacnic Soup, I'll introduce you. We're going to talk about Yevgeny Prigozhin. There's a few things I'm going to talk about with regard to him, and that will lead us on to sort of corruption. I've written about the topic before, but now that it's been designated as a transnational criminal organization by the US, we should reiterate some key points and update the latest news about them. So the US has designated Wagner PMC as a criminal organization that they've sanctioned. Now, it's taken a long time to get around to doing that, but now it's there. That's good. So Wagner is a Russian paramilitary organization that consists of a network of mercenaries, and many consider it to be a private army of Putin. Private military companies are actually illegal in Russia, so basically the group operates beyond the law. So they've set up this massive new base there, haven't they? And that is even considering that technically it's illegal. So this shiny new building, it's like the mafia coming to New York, building a massive new building, and everyone in New York saying, "Oh, look, that's a new mafia building," and not doing anything about it, even though like the mafia are illegal. Yeah. Despite its illegality, Wagner trains its personnel in a Russian MOD facility, Molkino. This camp is masked as a, quote, children's vacation camp. A New Lines magazine concluded that Wagner members come from 15 different countries, but most of them are Russian. The group doesn't have any central ideology, but many of its members and leaders have ties to various neo-Nazi movements in Russia. For example, Wagner leader Dmitry Utkin has several Nazi symbols tattooed on his body. Neo-Nazi group Ruzich also fights as part of Wagner. So the our whole idea that Russia, and you get the bots and bots on this thread and bots on all my other threads, and pro-Russian people saying, "Oh, Ukro Nazis and Ukrainian, and it's about denazification," and then singing the praises of Russia, whilst Wagner fairly openly has like Nazi. They'll complain about the Azov regiment, but kind of conveniently forget to talk about the fact that it looks like Wagner are in the same boat here. So there you go. Uh, yeah. And indeed, that soldier that you just saw up there, holding the Nazi flag, there is here in the was there in the Donbass. Wagner has been utilized in many countries around the world, but they came to global prominence during the war in Donbass in 2014 to 15. Wagnerites helped the Donbass separatists fight against the Ukrainians during the conflict, which helped Putin to outsource the insurrection. Highly controversial. I mean, the whole thing about the Donbass is it was a war. So, just for those who don't know, it was an illegal war. Russia was sending what were called little green men down to the Donbass and stripping them of their insignia, and they just speak Russian. And then these guys are pretending basically they were separatist soldiers fighting for for the LPR and the DPR, but they weren't. They were Russian soldiers or Wagnerites sent down. It's like imagine Scotland wants to get independence from Britain, and we end up having a war over it, a little battle along Hadrian's Wall, right? And then Russia sending in troops to fight for Scotland, but in fact, most of this appeared to be you know heralded and the information space controlled by Russia, and they were throwing in like pro-Scottish independence stuff in the information space, and then shoving in a load of troops who just happen to speak Scottish or whatever, Gaelic, and it's like, hang on, this is completely illegal. Like, effectively, Russia is invading the UK and supporting some kind of you know, insurrection, whatever, supporting some kind of separatist army, but it's really just Russia having a war with the UK in that case, under a different guise, and that's what happened with the Donbass, and why it's so controversial. And these pro-Russians complaining about, oh, the Donbass this, the Donbass that. It's like, you guys invaded with your own troops and then pretended to be separatist soldiers. It's just incredibly controversial. Anyway, wherever Wagner goes, he continues, war crimes follow. Prigozhin's troops have raped women in Mali, killed and tortured civilians in Ukraine, and tortured soldiers in Syria. In Russia, they are famous for hiring prisoners and then send them to the Ukrainian meat grinders like Bakhmut. The total number of prisoners hired by Wagner from Russia's prison system is about 38,000. At the beginning of January 2023, almost 30,000 of them were either killed, wounded, missing, or taken as prisoner. A whopping 106 people, or 0.28%, have been amnestied. So, and that was, very famously, Prigozhin said, "Yeah, oh, you can, well done, you've fought now for us for 6 months, you can go free." And then he literally said, just don't rape anyone. Like, wow, you literally said that. Oh my goodness. I mean, that just says, so you've now let out these really problematic people into society because they've gone and fought for you, but there's no rehabilitation gone on with these guys. I mean, what's the Russian rehabilitation system like in its criminal system? I don't know, and justice system. Recently, an official Russian TV channel showed an interview of Mikhail Popok, a Russian serial killer, rapist, and necrophile who wants to join. I don't know if you remember him, super famous some years back. A war effort. Was he the guy that killed 53 people? I don't know. A Russian war effort in Ukraine. He said that he'd probably do it during the spring since it's much warmer then. So yeah, I'll go and do that. I can get out, but I'll wait till it's just a little bit warmer. In January 2023, Wagner organised a hero's funeral for a man who beat his mother to death in a drunken frenzy. They also put up a plaque for Denis Kverzin, a convicted murderer, in a grade school in Saratov. Um, this idea that, oh, what a hero for the country. I mean, he's a convicted murderer, but we're just going to put his plaque up in the school just to commemorate him for fighting for 6 months and dying as a convict. in an illegal war. But Russia is not the only. But Russia is not the only place that they do the recruiting. Two senior military officers from the Central African Republic reported that Wagner is hiring criminals in Africa and sending them overseas to fight. These criminals, many of them held in custody for hard crimes such as rape and murder, are called Black Russians and now fight in the front lines in the east of Ukraine. Some of them complained about the lack of payments after a few months of fighting. So they made promises and they didn't fulfill those promises. Before Ukraine, Wagner mostly consisted of experienced ex-military people, but after Russia's failed mobilization and dramatic losses on the battlefield, they started hiring anyone willing to hold a rifle or just run and die for money. They've allegedly employed cannibals and serial killers, many of them carrying infectious diseases, including hepatitis and HIV. Obviously, this somewhat unverified. These cannon fodder are marked with appropriate bracelets. Even although almost 80% of the Wagner finest die in the meat grinder, hiring murderers and rapists to fight in Ukraine increases the prevalence of war crimes in Ukraine drastically. The group's monthly salary is estimated to be something like $700 to $2,100 but for the convicts, there's another prize: survive in the meat grinder for 6 months and you can go free. In January 2023, Prigozhin released a tiny batch of convicts telling them to don't rape women while in Russia. This release was probably done for PR purposes. That's what I was saying. Wagner has promoted the group by producing 3 movies: Tourist, Hot Sunlight, and Lucie Adu. I watched the first 2, so you don't have to. They're both shite. So there you go. In, interesting. I mean, for them to be producing like films to celebrate their work and whatnot. Just anyway, that's Prigozhin. That's Wagner, a highly problematic organization. And then there's this pretty long thread here. I don't ever read it all. But Yevgeny Prigozhin is known as Putin's chef, so that's his nickname. He's called Putin's chef for his many contracts to supply the Russian government with catering and food. But last year, the Russian Ministry of Defense sued him 560 times for supplying the Russian army with poor quality, rotten, and infected food. The independent Russian Telegram channel We Can Explain reports that in 2022, the Russian Embasy's procurement arm Verntorg filed 560 lawsuits against food suppliers associated with Prigozhin, claiming more than 107 million rubles in damages. That's almost $1.6 million. We Can Explain comments, this is a record number of lawsuits in a single year of litigation between the department and the supplier. Although it's not a record amount, Verntorg claimed the most money from Prigozhin's companies in 2020, which is 2.9 million almost dollars. The war in Ukraine has greatly increased the logistical demands on armies' food supplies and a similar increase in the number of irregularities and litigation over food provision. Prigozhin's companies not only supply it but prepare and serve it directly. According to We Can Explain, quote, auditors regularly find violations such as under full quantities of food, expired products, substitutions of substituted products, and substitutes of other quality, E. coli detected in food, cooks without health certificates, violations in storage, and so on. To continue, this isn't the first time Prigozhin's companies have faced complaints and litigation over the vile quality of their products, including insects and bacteria being found in it. Firms owned by or linked to Prigozhin, 22 such companies were identified by Russian journalists in 2017, also supply food to kindergarten students, patients in hospitals and sanatoriums, and the emergency services. However, there have been repeated scandals. Since 2011, at least 711 lawsuits have been filed against these firms for almost 900 million rubles, that's $13 million. Many violations involving foreign bodies in food have been reported, including worms, cockroaches, pieces of plastic, human hair, and beetles. Rotten and infected food has also been repeatedly reported. Hundreds of firefighters, soldiers, cadets, schoolchildren, and residents of sanatoria supplied by Prigozhin have fallen ill in outbreaks of rotavirus, salmonella, gastroenteritis, staphylococcus aureus, and E. coli, and so on and so on and so on. Prigozhin is still and ends despite all of this. Prigozhin has continued to be awarded contracts for food supply. 578 million dollars in 2017, which was also the year that the highest amount of litigation happened. It's a sign that influence is more important in Russia than safe food. So that's a little insight into Prigozhin, into Wagner. Now, on Prigozhin, and this has come out in open democracy. I haven't seen this in more mainstream media. And we'll go on. I mean, in Britain, we've got enough problems going on at the moment. Talk about corruption. I'm going to talk about corruption in a second. But we have some pretty big issues. Nadeem Zahawi, who is Tory party chair, is being asked to step down because he was Chancellor of the Exchequer. So he's in charge of getting all our tax income and taxes and the treasury, right? He's in charge of that. And at the time, he forgot, made a mistake with his own, and he's one rich guy as well, made a mistake with his own. He owns YouGov, the polling company, made a mistake with his own taxes, and as a result, has just had to pay £5 million to the Inland Revenue. Now to HMRC, uh, just what is going on here? The guy that's in charge of everyone getting their taxes in is not getting his taxes in to the tune of 5 million, and he's having to pay a fine on that and whatnot. It's just, anyway, that's the kind of thing that's going on. And so it's easy for stuff like this to go under the radar at times of rocky PR for the government. Revealed UK government helped sanctioned Putin ally sue British journalist. So this is actually going back to before the beginning of the war. Okay, sanctions introduced in the UK and Europe in 2020 was supposed to prevent anyone from doing business with Prighozin. So he had been sanctioned before the war, right? There was known what he's like. Donbass had been happening for years. Prigozhin was a known entity, sanctioned. He'd also been sanctioned by the US in 2018. But a vast cache of hacked emails shows that under the leadership of Rishi Sunak, so he is now our present Prime Minister, and he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer back at the time. So he was the head of the UK Treasury. So the UK Treasury issued special licenses in 2021 to let the oligarch override sanctions and launch an aggressive legal campaign against a journalist in the London courts. He's not just a journalist, he's the head of Bellingcat, who is the kind of open source or the intelligence company. In fact, my mate went to school with him, Elliot Higgins. So the notorious libel suit against Elliot Higgins personally followed revelations by his website Bellingcat about Wagner's shadowy operations and was part of Prigozhin's strategy to undermine the sanctions against him. And the case collapsed in March 2022. So this is after the war started, in the aftermath of the invasion of Ukraine. But key details of how the sanctioned oligarch was able to pursue the legal attack have remained a secret until now. An investigation by Open Democracy found that the government, so the British government, granted licenses for a British law firm to work on the case and approved key steps along the way. Sanctions prevented Prigozhin from coming to London, but the UK government gave permission for his British lawyers to fly business class to St. Petersburg so they can meet face to face and finalise their legal attacks on Higgins. So, just before I go on, let's get this right. Elliot Higgins is a known entity supporting the West in the intelligence gathering, like hugely important for keeping an eye on Russia. Like the stuff that Bellingcat has done during this war is phenomenal. Bellingcat were responsible for finding the two poisoners of um, in Salisbury in the UK, these Russian entities that came into the UK. It was Bellingcat, I think, that found them out, and now the government are facilitating the head of Bellingcat to be done in court by Prigozhin, who they've sanctioned. Prigozhin paid his London lawyers directly via wire transfer from Russia, causing the UK bank to initially withhold funds due to sanctions. And the London case was a key plank of his strategy to thwart the global sanctions. So on and so forth. I mean, gee whiz, this is a real problem, and it should never have been allowed. And it infuriates me, this kind of stuff. I'd like to see this hit mainstream media, and I'd be interested to see what they make of it. The other thing to note in terms of corruption, and I mentioned this this morning in the news section, Deputy Minister of Infrastructure resigned today. He announced this on his Facebook page. He is responsible for the big construction program and the regional direction. So again, charging more than things were costing and then pocketing the rest. Also, the Deputy Defence Minister, Shapovalov, summoned a resignation letter following a procurement scandal, and this might even affect the Reznikov, who is the Minister of Defense. So earlier, ZNUA reported that Defense Ministry purchased some foods for the military at prices 2 to 3 times higher than those at Kiev grocery stores. Reznikov has come back to say that actually that it's fine. There's reasons for this. So I'll get onto that in a second. Today, the Cabinet of Ministers will consider the dismissal of 5 heads of regional state administrations, reports UP. So there's a lot of people being chased by corruption investigators, which in a sense is a good thing that they're onto this. Like Zelensky's government, this was one of their big things. However, the head of Zelensky's own, well, I'll come on to this. So Lozinski was detained on Sunday by anti-corruption investigators. So this is the infrastructure guy. In a statement, they said they found $38,000 in cash in Lozinski's office and published a picture of piles of dollars of Hryvnia notes, and I showed you those in a previous video. On Sunday, Lozinski was sacked from the government. He has made no comment on the allegations. Before the war, corruption scandals were an almost daily feature of Ukrainian political life. The country was ranked 122nd out of 180 by Transparency International in 2021, making it one of the world's most corrupt countries. The EU has made anti-corruption reforms one of the key requirements for Ukraine gaining EU membership. So going forward, this is really good. The EU can really help Ukraine get to where it needs to get to in terms of trying to eliminate and hopefully successfully eliminating corruption. No country has successfully eliminated all corruption, as I've just shown you in the UK. Whether that's defined as corruption, I don't know. But Ukraine are making strides, and it's really important that they are seen to do so here and act really strongly and very robustly, because at the end of the day, this is a PR campaign to continue to get Western allies and other countries to support them, to continue to get the aid coming in. Now, if people think, well, if we're giving these guys aid and money's going in people's pockets, we're not going to give them aid. So this is a massive problem for Ukraine, and they need to stamp it out. And it appears that that's very much strongly being done so, or that they're making the right sort of signals here. Pavlo Halimon, deputy head of Zelensky's party, named after his TV show Servant of the People, was also dismissed on Monday because of corruption allegations. That's pretty huge, which he has not responded to. Ukrainian news site Ukrainska Pravda published an investigation on Monday morning into the purchase of a Kyiv property for more than his declared means. The head of Zelensky's party, David Arakamia, called for the matter to be investigated and dismissed Hamelon, saying his actions contradicted the values of the party. Absolutely. And then we go on to talk about Reznikov, who is the Ukrainian defense minister, and he's denied the claims. This is about the food costing 3 times as much, and has insisted a parliamentary committee be established to investigate. According to Reznikov, the price difference can be explained in part by deliveries to frontline areas and in part because different suppliers have different specialities. The problem for Ukraine is if Reznikov goes, if this scandal takes Reznikov down with it, then that's massive, because your defense minister in a time of war is not the sort of person you wanting to be getting rid of. I mean, there's a huge amount of expertise going on there. Yeah, there are lots more to say on that, but I'll leave it for another day. This interesting bit of footage just to finish up on. So this is a truck crammed with new coffins spotted in the Russian-occupied Krystalny, Luhansk Oblast. So maybe they're getting ready for the number of deaths that are taking place there. That's a lot of coffins, but then I'd imagine they're going to be needing that on a daily basis. Anyway, there you go. That's today's Ukraine War Update Extra. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate that. Please like, subscribe, and share. There are all the ways you can help the channel are below, or you can pop along to supporter.com/ATP. If you put the /ATP there, then anything you buy from there, my channel will get a little bit of commission. That'd be hugely appreciated. You could get some drinkware, so some mugs to show your support for Ukraine, and would also help out my channel a little bit. So anyway, that's just one idea, but thank you so much. Take care, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.